So I'm going to be the moderator slash facilitator tonight, just kind of introducing Hilda and Earl, and then at the end we'll have some questions and answers period that you guys can engage and get more clarification on this PowerPoint that they're here to present. So I just raise a hand if you know Hilda and Earl and their background in this community. It seems like there's a couple people that this is new. So I'm going to just do a little brief overview of how I got to know them and their grounding in this community. So I met them 2 years ago when I was looking to build an ADU in our backyard. I'm also a housing advocate in the outer Lower Cape area, and I was coming across in our own property and a lot of other properties that wastewater was a huge hurdle to building accessory dwelling units for people. And so I found them through a whole bunch of research, trying to find a third alternative to sewer wasn't in our neighborhood yet, and if we had to get an alternative innovative system or an innovative alternative system, it seemed to be cost prohibitive for our project. So I was researching what are the other ways that we could potentially build an ADU, and I sat down with them one wonderful summer day, and they spent, I think close to 3 hours with me. And that's one of the things I think that they are a huge treasure in this community for, is that they are constantly wanting to share information. I mean, the amount of PowerPoints that I've seen them create and flip books and tours of their house, they are beyond generous with their time, but they're beyond generous with the knowledge that they've accrued over decades. And they're really, they're experts in this field, both in living it on a day-to-day basis in ways that none of us really have to the depths that they have, but also just going into the science of it. I mean, they just live and breathe this. So I felt very honored that they asked me into their property and were willing to just be open about what they learned. And then we just developed a great relationship of kind of sharing back and forth. And you guys are really lucky to have them in your community. Hilda and Earl met as staff researchers at the New Alchemy Institute, which was here in this community from 72 to 80, or that's when they were here at New Alchemy Institute. And they were both consultants and educators, as well as staff researchers. And their experience includes a range of things that can't be, summed up here, but college-level courses they've taught, training interns, working with, is it UC Berkeley? Students and staff, and just relentlessly just educating the public and our elected officials about everything to do with ecologically sustainable solutions for our future. And so, again, I just think, we don't have anyone out like in our neck of the woods like this. You guys are really lucky, and I'm honored to be here tonight to hear these two articles that they're going to present. And the one thing I wanted to kind of just talk about is that within this pilot that got started in this town, which I tell everybody about, there are many different components and many different people working on this. And what I find is that even if you don't see eye to eye, every single person's critical, because when you look at how nature is designed, nothing is wasteful. Everything has value. Everything has a role. And so Hilda and Earl have their role that they've been playing, and other people have come along and have figured out what that role is that they want to play. And my hope is that in this community and larger in our region, we'll find alignment versus polarization. I think we live in a pretty divided time, and I hope that in the uncertainty and the chaos that we're experiencing above us, which is pretty frightening, that we can come together and figure out how to have some pretty simplistic, organic solutions to what have been complicated problems.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction. And yes, we have worked a lot together ever since we met, because I think housing is critical, and we can't have more housing unless we have affordable wastewater. And so we're trying to work on that together as one of the many things that this community needs, more affordable housing. So we have challenges here. And the first one that we want to talk about is the fact that we have a wastewater trap challenge, and actually a nitrogen pollution challenge. And that's the top one. So most of our water is polluted and is more than 50% overloaded with nitrogen. So we have to reduce it. We have to reach that goal of reducing in 20 years all the waters that are polluted, which is a lot on the Cape and a lot in Falmouth. And that mandate is since 2024. It used to be 40 years. Now we have 20 years to accomplish this task, which is a huge task, by the way. And then we have to fund it. It used to be we had 40 years of funding it. Now it has to be all reduced in 20, so we have to have more money quicker, and that's a huge challenge, especially right now, because since actually a couple of weeks, since our whatever happened on the top, I don't know how it trickled down, but we know that the Mass DP has reduced the amount of funding that they could guarantee to all the wastewater or water and wastewater projects. So that used to be that we could count on 20 years of borrowing money for all these big projects, and now it is nope. You can have 50 million for a big project, and after that, there's no guarantee that you can have more of next year. And if you get it, it would be maximum $50 million, but you have to ask for it. And there's no guarantee right now. And that's a huge difference from what it used to be, where we kind of were guaranteed that we would always get money for future projects. So that's the kind of situation we're in. Now, all that nitrogen that's polluting our water, where does it come from? Well, it comes from the food we eat, actually. This is what the amount of pounds of food we import, and the amount of fertilizers that we import. This is many years ago, so we import much more now. And that's a huge amount, because all of that ends up in the groundwater. And all of it gets into the ponds and the rivers and the estuaries and eventually ocean. And you can see the pollution. This is just one shot of a certain time. That is the pollution coming out of the estuaries and into our oceans. Most people are not quite aware of how that nitrogen actually flows, but it goes from uphill, of course, downhill, and it goes all through the groundwater and might hit one pond. It might be a pond here, and then it goes through a river maybe, and then it goes to another pond. Eventually, it always ends up in the estuary and into the ocean. And people think that if they have all the houses around the pond, that all those houses should do something to clean that pond. But it's actually the people that are upstream and on the upper part that pollute the pond, and the other people are polluting the next pond. So that's always a good thing to kind of visualize, and that's how I hope that this one works that way. So that's a shot of, where you see the nitrogen-rich water come out of our groundwater, really, ultimately, and that's all from the food and fertilizers that we have put into our system. And Falmouth has 14. Falmouth has the most nitrogen polluted, or most estuaries, and many are polluted, not all, but most of them are. And we have to fix them all in 20 years. And that goal is really hard to achieve. So we all are trying to figure out how could we do this where it is also fast and also affordable and also environmentally sustainable. And this is one that people should really put in their mind. 80% of the nitrogen that's in the waste stream is from urine. And it's only 1% of the volume. So we're flushing 4,000 gallons of water to remove 120 gallons of urine per year. And then we have to take all that nitrogen out again while it's all mixed in with the 4,000 gallons of water, plus all the bad water that's going in the same pipe from dishwashers and washers and all the gray water and all the other flushing. And that is impossible. Urine also has a lot of phosphorus. About 55% of all the waste phosphorus is in urine. And so if we can take care of the urine, then we also have a solution for all the freshwater ponds, because phosphorus is the one that really affects the freshwater ponds the most, even though it's a combination of nitrogen and phosphorus. But so if we take the urine out, we would help all the ponds, all the rivers, all the estuaries, and the ocean.
There are at least 3 solutions to dealing with this too much nitrogen. One solution, which is the traditional solution that towns have always looked towards, is to put sewers into areas to take the waste from the houses, take it away in pipes to some wastewater treatment plant, run it through the plant, gas off a bunch of the nitrogen into the air as nitrogen gas, but not all of it, but a large fraction of it. But all the water that went into the sewer still has to go somewhere, and so it is put into the ground usually, and eventually into the groundwater, and eventually into the ocean or into some nearby estuary. And that's been the traditional solution for towns in the past, because up to about 1980, the federal government would pay 90% of the cost for doing this. So it was easy for the town to do, or cheap anyway. So Falmouth now has plans to build sewers along the coast to the estuaries towards the east, as fast as they can afford it, and to take out a bunch of the nitrogen with sewers. And the water that comes from all these houses that are sewered goes to a wastewater treatment plant near Falmouth and gets treated in that place. And then it's put into the ground, essentially, to make it go through the groundwater, and eventually it'll end up in Buzzards Bay, typically. And that's the solution that's been done up till now. So more recently, the wastewater planning groups in Falmouth have figured out that they can't build sewers up in the higher up levels of the watersheds, because the houses are too far apart. You have to have miles and miles and miles and miles of sewer pipes to put sewers everywhere, and it's too expensive to do that. So the current plan is to put little mini sewers in everybody's backyard. Basically, they're called innovative alternative septic systems, and they're essentially little sewers and wastewater treatment plants. And the water goes from your house, through your septic tank, through these little mini sewers, and they gas off the nitrogen there in your backyard. Not all of it, but some of it. And then the water goes on through and into the ground, into groundwater. So Falmouth is now planning to do innovative alternative septic systems in 7,600 parcels of Falmouth, in different watersheds that need to be cleaned up from the nitrogen. And at $50,000 each, it's going to cost $360 million to do that. And currently, the homeowner has to pay this. If they put one in your backyard, if you're mandated to have one, at the moment you have to pay the cost to do it. So this is a typical innovative alternative septic system in the backyard. Every house has a septic tank, and every house has a leach field where the water eventually goes into the ground. And what the IAs are they are an additional tank that's put between the septic tank and the drain field, and they have stone in it and wood chips, and the water has to pass through those two compartments, and as they go through there, the nitrogen is gassed off, a bunch of it, but not all of it. So, and then the water goes into the leach field and into the ground again. And when you put these in, you have to dig up your whole property to put them in. And it's got a high cost for the destruction of the landscape and the repair of the landscape. But otherwise, it's a big cement tank where the water passes through. The typical IAs now being planned do not remove the phosphates. It goes right on through and into the groundwater and into wherever the groundwater goes. There are ways that they can remove the phosphate from them, but it isn't normally done yet.
The phosphorus, when it precipitates, is not usable. And we would like to save all the nutrients back to the agriculture, so it's not sustainable. But they can do it, yes.
This is what a typical house has now. It's a cement box, a septic tank. The water from your house is all mixed together. The urine and the feces and the shower and all the water is combined, goes through the septic tank. A little nitrogen gas is off, but not a large amount. And all the water goes through and into the ground and carries the pharmaceuticals and then phosphorus and some of the nitrogen, most of the nitrogen, and it goes into the ground. That's the traditional method of dealing with wastewater from a house. That's all over the Cape now. That's the reason that the water is polluted. So this is your house with a septic tank. All the nitrogen and the other minerals and the pollutants and the pharmaceuticals all go into the ground, passes through the groundwater, slowly goes through it's all sand. It goes downstream towards the ocean, passes through ponds and pollutes the ponds on the way, and eventually ends up in the ocean, and it pollutes the estuaries on the shore. That's the current situation. So we've started to look at the idea of having a third solution to the nitrogen problem, and which is urine diversion, which is you don't put the urine in the flush toilet. You just don't do it, because you mix it with water and you send it down there. It becomes a big problem that's expensive to fix. But if you can divert the urine in the house using a series of different kinds of urine diverting bathroom fixtures, you could collect it in a container, in a tank, in a holding tank, and have it taken away, transported away, instead of going into the ground. And there are a number of different urine diverting fixtures that will divert the urine from the house. And these are some of what they look like. If you had these in your house, you would be using urine diverting toilet fixtures that look like these. So urine diversion, how would it work outside of the house? Once you've done this, what happens? The infrastructure that we propose that Falmouth should do and that Cape Cod should do, and is actually being done in Brattleboro, Vermont, and has been for 10 years, is you have urine diverting fixtures in the house, and they divert the urine. It's put into containers for storage. It take a year to store a couple of people's urine in a big tank in the ground. And then once or twice a year, a truck would come and pump it out and take it away. And in Vermont, they've developed a system where they put it into storage tanks, and then they have a pasteurizer. It's a little machine. It heats the urine up for 90 seconds to 180 degrees. And as it heats it up that much, it kills all the pathogens and all the viruses that are in the urine. So they start with fresh urine on one side, they run it through the pasteurizer, and it becomes safe to use after it's been pasteurized. And then they truck it off and they give it to farmers. And the farmers use it as fertilizer for hay fields and cornfields and grain fields. And all of the nutrients from the food you eat are in, the majority of it are in that urine, and it makes excellent fertilizer for plants. So in Vermont, they've developed the Rich Earth Institute. It's a nonprofit. They developed this pasteurizer, and they've developed these methods for distributing in the farms. And so it turns out there's like 15 different urine diverting fixtures that you could choose to use to divert your urine. None of these are permitted in Massachusetts. The idea of urine diversion is completely new in the last 10 years. The Mass DEP regulations do not mention urine in their regulations whatsoever. It's never been considered a separate product, a separate item to be managed. So there are urine diverting fixtures all over the world, particularly Europe. It's done quite commonly, actually, but none of those have been brought to Massachusetts. None of them are approved officially by Massachusetts Plumbing Board. We would like them all to be approved. We would like people to have the choice to use any of these that they wanted to divert the urine in their house. But once it gets to the farm, the farmers have learned how to use it to spread it out for fertilizer. Some of them have special spreaders. They've developed other ways to put the urine into the ground as they plant crops and store it on the farm and use it. So all that's been developed, and it's done in Vermont now.
And it's also extremely cheap. So pasteurizing the urine of one person in a year, it costs $1.20. We're talking really small amounts of money to do all this work.
It costs $1.20 for a person for a year to pasteurize the urine. It costs $17 to move it from Falmouth to Plymouth County over the bridge, where they have 60,000 acres of farms that you could put it on. One acre can take the urine from 10 people. So if Falmouth does a project with 50 homes, that's 100 people, it takes 10 acres somewhere over the bridge to use it as fertilizer. the logistics work out pretty well. And it's very cheap to do this. Fertilizer in the world is manufactured, the nitrogen fertilizer. Natural gas is 90% of the cost of making nitrogen fertilizer. It used to be bought from Russia and Ukraine. They do not now provide it to the world anymore. So the cost of fertilizer has gone way up in the world market, and it's become unaffordable to third world countries to use because of the higher cost.
It's also unaffordable for the small farmer right now. So we have talked to the person who owns Stonyfield yogurt and milk, and he said he's mostly interested in this for the fertilizer because all the small farmers need cheaper fertilizer. And so that's every kind of there are many angles to this. So there's some people that really want to do this because it saves water, because you don't flush. And other counties or other states might only want to do it for the fertilizer. And then in our case, it's different because we do it mostly because of the water pollution issues. But they're all part of the same removing the urine from the wastewater. We are importing a lot of our phosphorus from Morocco. That's where most of it is coming from. We import most of our potassium from Canada. So if they're going to have tariffs on it, then there goes the price of our food. So holding on to all these minerals that are all in urine would be extremely important for the sustainability of our society, economically and environmentally.
What's the cost of urine diversion in a house? No one knows. The fixtures are not available. Your plumber is not allowed to put urine diverting fixtures in your house because the Massachusetts Plumbing Board doesn't approve any of them. There aren't good numbers on this. So one of the articles for the next town meeting that we're proposing to do is to have a person go to 50 houses and estimate the cost to put in several of these different kinds of toilets and see how much it would cost and get an average. Because right now the water planners in Falmouth, they say hooking up to a sewer will cost you $100,000 or more. Putting an IA will cost you $35,000 to $80,000. No number for urine diversion. There's just nobody knows. There is no number to compare. But we think it's about a quarter of the cost of doing these other things. And if you could show that through a study, then the planners could begin to compare sewers, IAs, and urine diversion as options in watershed plans. So we have an article that said we want a consultant to go around and go to 50 homes and estimate what it would cost to put urine diversion in these 50 homes, different combinations of fixtures, and to see how much it would cost. So what would this person do? They'd see how many bedrooms there are in the house that are suitable, bathrooms are suitable for urine diversion, which ones would be the best, which ones the homeowners would be willing to use, how much it would cost to put in the fixtures, do the plumbing, how much it would cost to be putting a buried tank or a surface tank. You can have holding tanks on the top of the ground instead of buried, which are cheaper. How many homeowners would do this if you told them it was going to cost them a quarter as much as putting an IA in if they're being mandated to put in an IA? So we would like to study this, have the town do a study. This would be the town doing this to find out the average cost of urine diversion in a house. And we have a budget, $48,000 to do 50 homes. And then they'd write a report and provide it to the public of what the average cost would be for different combinations. So this Article 16, this study, is not included in the tasks that the town is now doing and has paid MasTech to do. MasTech is not going to do this as any of their current tasks in their list that have been funded, and it is not one of the deliverables that they're going to provide to the town when they're done with their study. And it doesn't duplicate anything that they are now doing. It adds to it. It gives you more information than they are going to provide. So here's the proof of it. MasTech has 9 tasks to plan. One of them says assess prospective participants. Next one. Well, what they're going to do is, the town, in the town warrant, the finance committee said the scope of work for this work is being done by MasTech. That's not true. The scope of work is not being done by MasTech. Do the next one. What that particular task 6 is going to do is they're going to get a list of people who are interested. They're going to give them a description of what the proposed urine diverting project might be. They're going to get agreements from them, if they can, that they want to participate, and they're going to give the signed agreements to the town. They're not going to measure or estimate the cost of putting urine diversion in the house. It's nowhere in their plan. So this does not duplicate anything that's now being done. And why would you do this? One is to get data to let homeowners know what they might want to do and what might be affordable to them. Give the town meeting members some information about whether they want to spend money on a big 3-year project with Mass DEP, and to get data necessary to use urine diversion more widely than the current town is planning to do. And use more different fixtures. Right now, the current plan is to use a single fixture in the homes as part of this urine diversion pilot project. It's not decided yet, but the current thinking is they're going to allow one kind of urine diversion. There are 15. We would like them to try them all. And why would you do it now? We want to compare the cost of urine diversion with sewers and IAs for the water planners. We want to identify homeowners who would like to do this. If you do 50 homes and you have a consultant talk to 50 homes, you'll find out quickly whether a lot would like to and nobody. If you find out nobody wants to do it, then you don't go further. But if you find out lots of people would like to do it, you let them do the larger 3-year study. And then if you did these studies of 50 homes, cost them out, once the 3-year study started, you could begin immediately and not have to do that then. Okay? Then there's a second article, 17. We want to have 30 homes use temporary, affordable, inexpensive urine diverting fixtures and measure how much urine and how much nitrogen can be collected in those 30 homes in a year. No one's ever done this. No one knows. We've done a previous study. Do the next one. We did a previous study in September of 23 where we had 41 homes voluntarily use cubies, which is the urine diverting fixture that we're proposing. It's inexpensive and it's portable and it's temporary, and people would use these for a year. They would store the urine in containers. Certified, licensed hauler would take it away and take it to an approved location, and you would see after a year how much nitrogen might be removed in a big study where you have permanent installations. This would be done with 30 homes. We chose 30 homes because it's statistically valid. Next one. So this is how it would work. You would have cubies in the home. You would collect the urine and put it in containers. You'd have a hauler take it away after once or twice a year. You'd measure the water going into the house. You'd measure the water going off to wash cars and water lawns. The difference is the water that's going through the septic tank. You'd measure the volume of the water going out of the septic tank. You measure the concentration of nitrogen in that water, and you would find out how many pounds of nitrogen was leaving this house. And you know how much nitrogen you're getting from the urine. You measure that, you take concentrations, you multiply by the volumes, you get the number of pounds being taken away that way. And it would be very useful to know how much is going out of the house through the septic tank compared to how much is being carried off by the urine. No one's done any of this, and we think it would be worthwhile to do. Okay? That's just more details of the same thing. Next one. The budget for this one is $94,000, and it would take a year. Well, you have a meter in your house now that tells you how much water you buy from the town.
Yeah.
They would put a meter on the outside of your house wherever you had a faucet going off in a hose. People wash their car, people water their lawns. You can't measure the water going through the septic system directly. It turns out to be very difficult to do. You can measure the water going in your house. You can measure the water going off to your lawns and you're washing your cars. The difference is the water going out through your septic tank. So you calculate that. At the town meeting, they always have the finance committee make a judgment about the articles. And petitioners' articles, which is the citizens proposed that the town do this. And the finance committee said, this is not very important. You're not going to help us make urine diversion become an IA. That's the important issue here. That's what the town wants to do. That's where we want to put our money. This is not doing that. Well, we're not trying to prove that urine diversion would be equivalent to an IA. We want to prove that if people were allowed to use these different fixtures, that they could reduce the nitrogen leaving their house and going into the groundwater. They're going to reduce pollution. They're going to do this voluntarily in a wide area with many different fixtures. Falmouth is not planning to do that at all. This is quite different than what Falmouth is now planning. What to do with the urine? People always say, what are you going to do with all this urine, right? So, next one. There are several different things. On a home scale, you can do home agriculture. You are permitted to have urine diversion in your own home. You are permitted in Falmouth, according to the Board of Health in 2023, to store urine on your own property in a container. And you can use it as fertilizer safely on lawns and plants. The Rich Earth Institute has done scientific studies to show that there is not a health risk to do that on your own property with your own urine without any danger to the public health of other people. Next one. You can make struvite fertilizer out of it. There's a company called Wasted, which is in Vermont and now in Massachusetts, and their specialty is ecological sanitation. And they collect urine, and they pasteurize it to make it safe, and then they run it through these little devices. They put magnesium with it, and out comes crystals of fertilizer. And the fertilizer is slow release, high phosphorus fertilizer, and they sell it now. They sell it in Vermont, and they sell it in Massachusetts. We would like Falmouth and the Cape to send their urine to these people, let them take it, and make struvite fertilizer out of it. That's a saleable product with value. So the other part of this making of the struvite fertilizer is all of the liquid that goes through this reactor. The crystalline fertilizer falls out the bottom, but all of the liquid is still there. You still have to do something with it, and it has all the nitrogen still in it. So they are now beginning to be interested in making compost with the urine after the struvite, and you put it through these composting containers. They turn around, you put in urine, you put in food waste, you put in leaves, wood chips, landscape debris, and it turns for a week or so, and out the end falls solid material, which is compost that has the urine in it and has the nitrogen from the urine in it. And these things are made on a large scale, and they make them on a small scale. So you can do them in small batches or in big batches. And this is how the wasted people think they're going to now use the leftover liquid after they made the struvite. And they are working on getting a Massachusetts site in Abington, Massachusetts to do this.
We have proposed this to Falmouth more than 10 years ago. And it's so inexpensive compared to anything else they do with their waste products, food waste, landscape waste, and of course our human waste. And just to do this would be so beneficial on so many levels, but I don't know, I just didn't get anywhere.
The trick here is you make it safe to use by pasteurizing it first. So the compost is completely safe for pathogens and viruses, or any kind of worry about the urine going into the compost?
The urine is mostly sterile, but when it comes through your body, where it touches your actually extremities, the external parts of your body, that is not sterile. And so that's why the pathogens in there are very little, but there are some.
It's enough that you have to do something about it if it's going to affect the public health.
Yeah. So if you do commercial food, you do have to pasteurize. So in this case, when they bring it to a farmer, all of it is pasteurized. If we would do it in a composter, that would be ideal. You pasteurize, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's probably more pathogens in the food that they compost than there's in the urine that they compost. And of course, eventually, we want to compost all the feces too, because it's carbon and it's lots of nutrients there too. But that is so far out of mass DEP's mind that we cannot start there yet.
The other trick here is that the final product is solid.
Yes, it's real.
And you can store it, and you can transport it. It's not liquid. Transporting urine as a liquid has its own problems. But this becomes a solid fertilizer material, which makes it more versatile. So the reason we're interested in doing this stuff at all is that currently the action of reducing the nitrogen that's polluting our waters is very slow. And the plans are very long, and the costs are very high. Next. This is a chart, a timeline developed for Falmouth of the plans for the town to make plans for the different watersheds in the town and get permission from Mass DEP to build sewers, put in IAs, hopefully put in urine diversion, although it doesn't appear anywhere in any plan. And this is how long it would take to do these things. So if you get the first set of watersheds plans developed in 2027, you get it approved by Mass DEP, you have 20 years to do it. And these long time plans are too slow, basically. The water is getting worse, the estuaries are getting worse, freshwater ponds are getting more toxic, getting more cyanobacteria. You're talking 20, 30 years here. Urine diversion a lot quicker than that, we think, and would be faster. And they're cheaper. This is a report done in the fall in November about basically IAs in Springfield, Massachusetts. All the IA people got together and had a conference, and they developed these estimates, costs for doing things. The cost of a sewer, the average cost of connecting to a sewer for a single property is $300 per pound of nitrogen processed in a sewer. One person makes 8 pounds of phosphorus nitrogen in a year. So it costs $2,400 to process it by a sewer, wastewater treatment plant. Per person. So
per year.
And IAs cost, this is a very high number, but that's what they said, would cost $600 a pound of nitrogen per person to process your nitrogen in an IA in your backyard. And that works out to a very large number for a person in a year. Incinerating toilets, which we didn't talk about here, is a way to burn up the human waste, completely vaporize it, and none of it goes in the ground. It's urine diverting in the sense that you don't let the urine go down in the ground. You don't get collected either. It's gone. It's gone into the sky.
But all the other minerals are there.
Yeah, all the other minerals are still
ashes.
there. But urine diversion, these are numbers from the Rich Earth Institute in Vermont. They figure it might cost $35 to $50 for a pound of nitrogen to be processed with urine diversion, the technologies that you saw, pasteurize it, truck it off to a farmer, let the farmer spread it. It's like a fraction of these other options. And so economically it looks a lot cheaper than anything else that currently is being proposed. The nitrogen in our groundwater, polluting the water, is the challenge of our time in Cape Cod and in Falmouth. The Cape Cod Commission says you have to remove 50% of the nitrogen that's going into the ground to fix the problem. DEP says you have to do it within 20 years. If you add the cost of sewers in Falmouth and the cost of IAs in Falmouth, you're up about $1 billion for Falmouth to pay for the 14 estuaries to fix the way they're now currently planning. And now, in the last month, the state of Massachusetts, which used to give low-interest revolving loans to towns for their wastewater treatment and their water supplies, reduced the quantity of money that they're willing to give, and they don't make any prediction in the future that towns are able to get this money. So these are all interacting problems. It makes it really difficult to know what to do. One of the I think the Water Quality Management Committee meetings, Amy Lowell, the sewer superintendent, projected the cost of all the different sewering projects that they imagined happening all the way out to Wickwood on the South Shore, plus the outfall is around $600 million.
Yeah, 600 million for the sewers. And of course, that's today's prices. Who knows what that will be in 10 years or 20 years.
And the IAs are about $380 million. So it's just approaching $1 billion, which is a lot for a small town. So we think urine diversion is the opportunity of our time. It probably will solve the water pollution problem. If you could reduce all the nitrogen that's going into the ground from these homes, it saves money. It's cheaper than other solutions. Saves water. These are waterless urine diverting fixtures. Every person would reduce the amount of water coming out of the house by 4,000 gallons if you use waterless fixtures. You don't have to buy that water. The town doesn't have to supply that water. It's savings on both levels. It protects the environment. It keeps the nitrogen from polluting the freshwater ponds. It keeps the nitrogen from going into the ocean. The environment would be better off. It recovers wasted nutrients and gives them back to agriculture, which is economically important and reduces waste of resources that we now do. It reduces greenhouse gases in the sense that if you could not have to build so many sewers, you will not have so many greenhouse gases coming out of the wastewater treatment plants. Lots of greenhouse gases are produced by wastewater treatment plants. Lots of greenhouse gases are produced by building sewers, the structural part of construction of sewers, which nobody pays any attention to, is not recorded, is not required to be stated in the wastewater treatment plans for a town. But the greenhouse gas emissions from wastewater treatment plants is very high. And if you could avoid some of that, you're avoiding some of the greenhouse gas emissions. And it creates potentially lots of businesses. You have people who are the haulers for the urine. You have people installing urine diversion fixtures. You have people making struvite and selling struvite. You have people making compost. You have all these businesses and jobs that would be created if people did this on a big scale.
Do you have an estimate of how much that would be, like Gladys?
No one's done any.
Anything on that?
No one's done any of these economic analysis as far as we know.
The project that we did in Green Center just to figure out how much nitrogen is diverted by collecting it from a home was the very first project that was ever done anywhere in the world, because there was never a fixture that could separate the urine from the feces and from the water. And now that we have this little cubie, which can be used by men and women, and is really inexpensive, we had finally had a fixture that we could use to start measuring. So in this case, we had the households do it, and we were able to get actual numbers of how much nitrogen was and phosphorus in the urine, because everybody eats differently, so their concentration in their waste is different. So we had that number, and then we had an average of all the houses, of 41 houses and 62 people in the houses, how much nitrogen on average was reduced in 2 months. And then you can extrapolate in a year. And that number was completely different, much higher than anything the sewer could do, which of course is impossible because this was only part of the waste that comes out of the house. But all the other numbers are all estimates. All the MEP reports, all the things that people have to do or the planners have to do are all based on estimates, because nobody had ever been able to separate these things. So now we have the real numbers, so now we know how much nitrogen can be removed from a house on voluntary basis with a little temporary fixture.
That town in Vermont that does actually Do they keep any pictures or anything?
They don't measure anything. They just
Well-
collect from lots of families and they put it in a big tank and then they measure the concentration in that. They have no idea of.
Their purpose is to scientifically study the use of urine, and they collect urine from hundreds of people in Brattleboro, Vermont, in these cubies, and they give it to the farmers, and they use it to do experiments. They will grow vegetables with it and find out if the pharmaceuticals from the people that are in the urine end up in the food, which they do not. They don't end up in the food, they don't end up in the soil, they don't end up in the water under the soil. It turns out that the soil life, the organisms in the soil, eat these pharmaceuticals. They break them down and they degrade them and they disappear. That's not a health issue. They do experiments with PFAS. There's no PFAS, measurable PFAS, in urine. So you don't have to worry about putting PFAS into as fertilizer into your crops. There's more there's more PFAS in rain than there is in urine. So what they do, they collect the urine from all these people, but they don't keep track of individual homes. They don't say this home gave us 10 pounds of nitrogen. They don't do that. They've never done that.
And they never thought about it, but because they didn't have the same pollution issues as we have.
They don't
So
have
that
water
was a
pollution.
new angle to the whole urine diversion projects that they did. So now they're working together with Falmouth because it's a new angle to all their work.
They actually do it to help the farmer. They don't have water pollution. Their wastewater goes in the river and disappears. They never see it again. But they want to help the farmer. They want to give fertilizer to farmers. That's their main interest.
Just a small clarification. You pointed out there's 15 devices, none of which are yet approved by the plumbing board. I do believe that Mass Tech is focused on a particular device, because for each device that has to get Mass Plumbing Board approval, it has to go through a rigorous testing process that can range from $18,000 to $18,000 to get a device approved. So I believe Mass Tech is not negating a whole bunch of devices, but they're focusing on one for the study, and I do believe they had funding in there to get the device that they picked out approved. That when I saw a budget breakdown from the last, I could be wrong. I saw after last time when the breakdown of different numbers, I thought that was in there. That was the first thing, just to understand. If people hear that there's 15 devices out there, each one of those requires the manufacturer on a normal circumstance to do the testing and then submit it into the board to get passed. Okay, it's not up to towns to do it typically. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is a little bit of a thing that you need to be aware of. If a urine diversion gets put into your home, and you are in a neighborhood that the town then puts the sewers into, the sewer betterment gets assessed to your property, regardless of whether you hook up to the sewer or not. Okay? So I just want to have eyes open as we're looking at this, unless some other device or special legislation or something is done. It's an issue around the IAs right now. If somebody puts an IA in and then the sewer comes in, they're going to get hit with the betterment, whether or not they've got a urine diversion or an IA already.
So there was a regulation at that time that people that did put eco-toilet in would be allowed to be exempt from hooking up to the sewers. But yeah, so we could get that. I mean, it's just all a matter of will. It's not that we can't. It's just a regulation. There are many, many different eco-toilets. I think we have about 40 on our list, but it's true, none of them are permitted by the plumbing board. But last time, 10 years ago, we were allowed to use any that we wanted on that list that we had presented. We had probably 10 or so on them, to use them as a pilot study, not for permanent, but as a pilot. And we had expected the same thing to happen now, but there's a different people on the plumbing board that are not as lenient. And that is really sad, because if it's just a few people on a board that will hold back a very essential pilot project because they want it certified through a certification process that is very expensive, that they have no guarantee that they can ever recoup that money, and then not even knowing after certified, because we've gone through that, that the plumbing board will accept it. But that's another kind of level. So there's a couple people that have that power to hold back a pilot project that Falmouth wants to do as a pilot. We're not asking them to approve all these fixtures, but it's the chicken and egg. If that urine diversion pilot project was approved with different fixtures, then the manufacturers could see there is a market, because there's a lot of market here. There's the whole Cape, the whole South Coast, all the islands, they're all interested, and far beyond, because this problem is a worldwide problem. So if they could see that urine diversion is a marketable item where they can make a profit from, then they would go through the certification, and they would probably make more, as we have now heard that I think it's American Standard is thinking about making urine diversion flush toilet. Urine goes one place, the flush toilet element is only for the feces. And because they see what's happening in Falmouth. It's not because of what's happening somewhere else. No, it's because what's happening here that they see a possible market. So we can't just hold ourselves back of not doing anything because the plumbing board, a couple guys there, decide that they don't want to give a pilot status to our pilot project. And that's the essential blocking issue that's blocking this whole thing to proceed faster than it could be.
Are you aware of any state that has certified fixtures?
No, I don't think there's any state that is certified, but we don't know. We have to find another intern that can do that study. But we know that in Vermont, you're allowed to put in urine diversion in your house yourself even, but you cannot do it commercially. So then you have to go through a pilot and with special variants, permitting and all that's the issue. But in your house, you can put that in Vermont. So there are states that have some lenience, where the Massachusetts Plumbing Board is known to be very difficult. And I think we all have experience with that.
In town now, we're looking at the Water Quality Management Committee, if I can be corrected on this, has sort of designated three types of areas. One is in areas where the sewering is planned, and other areas where, within these quote geo boundaries, where IAs would be planned, and there's other areas where nothing would be looked at. But in the IA area, it may be that area, depending on how this all comes out, could work out, and there wouldn't be any issue with hooking up to a sewer there, or the third area. So I think that's important. And then in addition to that, as the town is moving forward in pretty big strides with regard to the shellfish aspect, and that might be something that could then be factored into the overall plan as more data comes in. This is a very dynamic, progressive process, and it is, and so that we just have to sort of show distinct areas. Like if there is a sewer going by your house, well, maybe you wouldn't go into either of these. You may go into hook up to the sewer. So I think that's important. It doesn't mean not everything is, as more data comes in and more knowledge comes in, we're in adaptive management. So I think I would just put that out. It doesn't mean that the whole town won't be sewered. Okay, thank you.
Is there any private funding available to conduct these studies?
This study that we want to do is the 1 year long with the cubies, there's the temporary fixtures. It's very inexpensive. We wanted to do it regardless, but we wanted the town to do it because it makes so much more sense for the town to do it. But when we calculated it with all the contingencies and everything we could think of, the study would be costing about $1,700 per household to do it. So I think we could find enough people, and that's hiring people for everything. There's a lot of things that we can do much less expensive than we have in the budget. I think there are a lot of people that have expressed an interest to us just to do it themselves. They just want to do it because it's environmentally correct, and they want to fix their pond, they want to fix their river, they're perfectly fine to pay for it. And if you don't tell them you have some idea what it costs, which we do, it's about $1,700 per year for all the testing and all that. I think we find a lot of people, but It's not up to us because we have now proposed it to the town, and it will be the town that does the work and the town to decide how they want to proceed.
So is there private funding available to do
No.
these studies?
As far as we know, no. We've never heard of any private foundation or grant funding for this kind of work. Rich Earth Institute gets National Science Foundation money to do science on urine diversion. We've not seen on the Cape or in Falmouth grants available for this kind of work.
So what is the selection criteria to determine who those 30 homes are going to be?
We would ask for volunteers.
Anybody, and if we have 50, great. If we have
Right.
70, great.
We have an anecdote for that. In fall of 23, when we decided to do this through the Green Center, within 2 weeks we had 41 homes who volunteered to do it. We just asked people, would you do this? And we had 41 people say, yes, we'll do this.
Ken Webb, taxpayer, full-time resident of Falmouth. Study methodology. You're going to presumably come up with data from the Article 17 funded study, and that data, I assume, is going to be used to help inform public officials about the effectiveness of urine diversion. But yet you're conducting a study with 30 homes that will volunteer to do this, and my guess is those are 30 homes that are going to be highly motivated to produce the best possible outcome for the study. And what concerns me is how does that data translate to a neighborhood-wide, a community-wide deployment of this type of, I'm not going to call it technology, I'll call it a collection model, when the data that's being produced by your study is biased based on the fact that certain individuals have raised their hand emphatically to participate in the study.
This is an article in a town meeting requesting the town of Falmouth to do this. If the town of Falmouth wants to choose their participants through some other method that's more objective, that's perfectly fine.
But certainly you can agree as scientists that a randomized controlled trial would be the best way to come up with valid data.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
But on the other hand, so what the town probably will do is, in a big project, have one type of toilet, and all toilets have to be urine diversion, or the other ones have to be made unusable. So then they have all the urine that household produces collected. In our case, what we propose, that's not the case. We did do it voluntarily. There were people in our study that were home only to sleep. They hardly ever used it, so their data was very small. And other people that were there, basically like us, 24 hours a day because the office and home, all very different. So all you can do is have an average. And that was an average of people willing to use the QE whenever it was comfortable. And there were people that might have done it a lot, and some people did not do it. We didn't care because we were just curious. And so it's not a scientific project that way. I totally agree, but it had a good indication. So if people are now allowed to have urine diversion in one toilet, that's the same thing. You have no idea if people are going to use it all the time or they're willing to do it only at night. You have no idea. That's why most likely, I'm not sure that that's true, but most likely Mass DEP would not go for it because they want to do what you say, all or nothing. And
But that's science.
yeah,
That's how science produces the data.
That sure it is.
In a public health from a public health standpoint that unfortunately policymakers use and rely on to make decisions.
Yep. Sure. Sure it is.
With
You
widespread
measure all
deployment.
you measure all the urine that you come out, and that's the amount of nitrogen you have removed. And Mass DEP says there's a TMDL, a total amount of nitrogen that has to be removed. You count the amount of nitrogen that you collected in that year. You know how many pounds it is. You know how close you came.
By the way, you did put up an awful lot of data on the screen. Is there a place where the research that supports that data can be found?
Which data?
Well, data in terms of the costs for different types of.
We have references for everything that you saw.
How do I get a hold of that if I want to? Or anybody does.
Email me and I'll email you the references.
Do you think that's something that might or should be available to just town people in general?
Absolutely, that would be great. That would be great. But we're volunteers. We're a nonprofit. We're unpaid. We have no staff. It would be great if someone would do that. You email me. I will tell you the references we use in what we say.
Okay.
The data on sewering and extrapolation on cost due to this current, I guess, or current uncertainty that's arising with the funding with the state and everything like that, and the progression of sewering and how well that's going on, if there's any setbacks or anything like that, and how that extrapolation to the cost and how much that would affect the town. It's like, where can I find that data? Do you guys have any idea about that? Or
Well, there's a Water Quality Management Committee in Falmouth that studies all that. There's some of them are here. You could ask them for questions like that.
Yeah, because I was just interested in how you brought the, saying how funding's changing or something like that due to the current administration, the trickle-down effect.
Oh.
I'm wondering how that would, affect sewering cost-wise to the town versus, focusing on alternative methods, because we're not printing money here in Falmouth like that.
So there's a program called the State Revolving Fund, the SRF.
Yeah.
And it was originally funded through some federal dollars, but it's kind of like a home mortgage bank business at this point, okay? Mm-hmm. They give a loan to the town of Falmouth. Town of Falmouth pays back the loan.
Is there interest on that loan?
They're typically 0% if you do certain things.
Okay.
But the money goes back into the State Revolving Fund. There's a trust, there's a group that looks at it. Over the last year and a half, since the nitrogen sensitive zones were defined and put forth by the DEP, and a whole bunch of people on the Cape started looking at what they would have to do. The number of people that started communities putting in for that SRF money started to grow. So I'm just trying to help you through this. So in response to, in essence, oversubscription. If I'm a bank and 40 people want to come in and get a loan from me, I only have enough to give out 20 or 30 loans this year. I have to put some limits on my banking structure to make sure I don't bankrupt my bank. Okay? The state didn't give a lot of notice. That's the bad news. Okay? They didn't say they're going to end the program. There's never been any underlying commitment that the program would go from year to year in the past. It's always been the fund, the trust commits again year to year, okay? Water and wastewater. So they turned around and said, Barnstable and Yarmouth went and got good funding out of their communities, 100 million here, 100 million there. And the trust folks said, whoa, wait a minute, we can't give you all that money now. We've got to distribute this money around as evenly as possible to all the communities that are trying to get things better, okay? So it's not the end of the world. The rules changed, but it's not the end of the world. The second thing is, a number of years ago, they put a tax on hotel, motel, if you will, and money from that tax goes to something called the Cape and Island Trust.
I've heard of that.
Right? And the Cape and Island Trust initially made a commitment that they would pay they would target 25%. Again, based upon the demand on their system, they're struggling to hold that 25%. But they're much better about communicating how much revenue they're coming in and how they're distributing it back. So, for example, on the sewer project that we're going to come up before the town this year, we're probably going to get 20% or more of that cost back from the Cape and Island Fund as a direct subsidy to reduce the overall cost of the project. So that's where the financing is right now. It's not ending. It's not going away. It's getting adjusted based upon the incredible amount of demand across the entire Cape and Islands.
All right, yeah, I understand, that. I was just wondering, because I saw the uncertainty in the funding, and I know soon it could be expensive, but I also believe as a resident of Falmouth that we need to take a multifaceted approach to our wastewater, and if we have viable options that are cheaper or it can help alleviate that cost or something, because this is my personal beliefs, the town of Falmouth, we can't always rely on tourism. Tourism is slowly declining. Things are going on 50 years in the future. I don't think tourism is going to be having the power it did 30 years ago when I was first born or anything like that. So as a community, we need to focus on sustainable options or bring in a multifaceted approach, just, focusing on that. And if anything out there, or any ideas being positioned by community members or anything of that nature, we should at least look into it, and stuff of that nature, which could help alleviate, taxpayer dollars and stuff of that nature. That's all I was saying.
John Kaufman, Falmouth resident, Water Quality Committee member. I guess, Earl and Hilda, if you project out 5-10 years, is your expectation that urine diversion will be approved by the Mass DEP and it'll be one of the alternatives, the non-traditional alternatives that a homeowner outside of the Seward area could choose from as long as they met the Mass DEP requirements of operating all the fixtures in their house to urine diversion? Because I'm not sure, I don't think you can just do a partial retrofit. You have to do it as 100% change.
Okay, well, I disagree with that. We would like residents to be able to use urine diversion fixtures voluntarily as they choose, and at the end of the year, report the number of pounds of nitrogen removed by the urine that got taken away by the hauler, and report that to the town, and the town reports that to DEP, and DEP gives the town credit for removing that number of pounds of nitrogen. They don't have to change every toilet in the house. They don't have to use the urine diverting toilets. They can do anything they want. But if you can prove at the end of the year that you've exported 20 pounds of nitrogen from your home, DEP should give the town credit for that.
But is that what DEP is saying? I understand your position, but what is DEP's position right now?
We have no idea because they're not transparent.
They don't talk to us.
They don't talk anymore, even though they promised they would get us to all the meetings, but they didn't. I think that we cannot wait for a couple people in one department to make decisions of our future. And that's my feeling about this. And this is our future. Wastewater costs are too high to keep going. And we have to clean up our water. That's why we started on this 10 years ago as volunteers. Nothing has gotten better in 10 years. They have not come up with any better solution. They stuck to the same old. A little bit of IAs, okay. After people had to spend millions of dollars to get them approved for 3 years. That's not a real alternative that's sustainable. So I have a really hard time to predict what a couple bureaucrats are going to do about our future. And that's the problem we have with everything, really. So I want to keep going on what I believe is environmentally, economically, the best thing for this town and for the Cape. And if they don't go along, then I feel I've done the best I can. But I want to go above them. I mean, it's crazy that a couple people in the plumbing board and a couple people at Mass DP have to say of this town can do a pilot project or not, and how it should be done. Our town should be telling them what they want to do. And then see what the result is. Do it for a year. If we take out all the nitrogen we need to take out, great. If we don't, then we have to improve. But to hold us back on regulations that are 50 years old doesn't make any sense for a future that we can't see anymore. That our kids don't want to have kids in. So I'm not buying that whole thing of predicting what Mass DEP is going to do, because they have not done anything, in my eyes.
That the DEP said that removing 50% would probably alleviate, on Cape Cod, would alleviate the problem.
Cape Cod Commission did.
Yeah, Cape Cod, whatever. I mean, but it's not necessary to remove 100% to get beyond this problem. So it wouldn't be necessary for all the households to remove 100% either. And another thing, there's kind of a elephant in the room here. When they hitch you up to the sewer, if you're hitched to the sewer, effectively they charge you twice for your water. They charge you for it coming to your house, and then they double your bill to cover the water when it goes back through the sewer. Now, anywhere else in the United States and other places in Massachusetts, say if you irrigate, they allow a thing called an exclusion meter, where you irrigate with a separate meter and you pay the same price for water that everyone else pays. Now, I tried a couple of times in town meeting to get this town to accept exclusion meters, and they refused. The word from the DPW was basically, we were counting on the money. So, unfortunately, the truth is that government would prefer sewer because it's basically a hidden tax and they make money off it. And I think that the way my articles on the exclusion meters proved it, whatever, it's just a fact. So that kind of explains why the kind of pushback you get on this obvious alternative, because they'd rather put in a sewer and charge you double and make more money off you, period. Follow the money, always.
Hilda, have you run across any country or municipality that's made it cool to do urine diversion? Because what I think we need is an influencer or a bunch of younger influencers who think it's cool and begin to and point out how ridiculous it is to be doing anything else. So in your presentation, the first part was great, it's regular. There was a second part that was interesting. All these intriguing ways of actually using it, and pee is sterile, it's wonderful, and I'm not kidding. Until somebody figures out how to do that, we're going to sit here and talk to each other, and not get forward. So I don't know how to do it, but maybe somebody else does. We could hire Carl Rove, maybe.
I think there are really a lot of people that want to do this. It's Mass DEP and the plumbing board that's holding us back. So how can we influence them to help us to make a pilot project? Because if we do a pilot and it's successful, Martha's Vineyard is waiting for it. All the towns on the Cape are waiting for it. Towns, Wareham, we working now with Wareham. They have $600 million or something on sewers for a town smaller than this. I mean, there you put somebody there. There's so many people interested, but I don't have any clout with the Mass DEP. And we were hoping that if we do this all through the town, that the town could be more influential that way. But as far as I know, the last I also heard, the town should be talking to our state reps and to our senators and to all these people that influence Mass DEP. And they have never talked to anyone. We've talked to senators, but as we heard, they have not.
Last question, have you ever been invited to present anything at the schools?
Yeah, we have. The schools come to us. See, what we have learned is that people have to see it. People have all kinds of imaginations of what a urine diversion toilet looks like. And we had somebody in recently who had, progressive young person and working with farmers farming. So you would think people would really know. And when she saw our toilet, she said, "Oh my God, this is so different than what I had imagined. So much simpler, so much cleaner." And so people have to see it, and that's what we found. I think that's what happened with Talitha, who's now extremely active down at Cape with the urine diversion. If you can't imagine it, then you can't push it for anybody. So talking to the schools, we did a couple where the kids had summits, eco summits, where they had spent a couple days with the school learning about things. And most of the kids, when they are that age, they are much more interested in their phone. I hate to say that, but these were kids that were in science classes, and the amount of level of knowledge that they knew was astoundingly small. They did not even know what a fossil fuel was. And this is 11th and 12th graders that came. And the teachers talked to us afterwards of how much they have to do with their kids in their science class when they come in 11th grade, how much they have to teach them to get up to par. So we only have so much time, so we have to figure out where we have the most effect on the time that we have.
Malcolm Donald, I've been giving a lot of thought to this, the whole concept here, and I've been thinking about John Kennedy, and I've been thinking about the United States entry into World War II, and we were in a really tough situation, but we decided that we were going to do it, and it was full speed ahead, and we did it, and that's the kind of effort we need here to pull out the solutions that are available, and we need to have all the players in the same room and talking about the thing and figuring out, a lot of these problems are man-made restrictions. I mean, so, ask now what you can do for your country.
Robert Golder, homeowner in Falmouth. It seems to me that the town has been given the responsibility by the state to respond to our nutrient pollution problem in the estuaries. But although the state has given the town the responsibility to do it, the town's not been given the authority to carry out that responsibility as regards the funding and other impediments in the way, such as are found apparently at the DEP and the Massachusetts Plumbing Board. We're all stakeholders in this problem, whether we see it as a construction problem, whether we see it as a water quality problem. We're all stakeholders, and I would urge the members of town boards to work as stakeholders with the Green Center and with the involved and interested citizens, so that all of us can look at the science, the economics, and the values within our town in order to be able to resolve this problem as efficiently as possible. Instead of looking at this as an us versus them, Green Center versus town versus state, I would urge us locally to work together and find the ways to particularly engage the state to understand that in order to carry out our assigned responsibility, we really do need to have the authority to move forward. So I hope everyone will work in that direction. Thank you.
I just wanted to share, I don't know if there's readers in the room, we are in a library. So there's a book that I have recently read that I think connects to this, but it's not an environmental book, it's not a scientific book, it's really looking at how we have developed our towns since World War II. And so I don't know if anyone's heard of this book, Charles Marone, he calls it a recovering civil engineer. It's called Strong Towns. I highly recommend it. I don't know if there's a copy at Falmouth Library, but he talks about these giant infrastructure investments that small towns end up making after World War II that eventually leave us insolvent. And that there is this whole push around housing and development that's called incremental development, where it's going back to how we used to develop our towns, which was based off of our needs and kind of organic growth versus this kind of large, robust investment that eventually can bankrupt places. So I highly recommend it as a way to just understand a bigger picture around the infrastructure piece of this and the money piece, especially when we're looking at the federal government rapidly changing before our eyes. I mean, I was at the forum last year and things have not changed, and yet they've changed tremendously in the last 6 weeks. We can't act like this is just last year where we're going to a town meeting and we're going to just talk about things as if they are always going to be like that, between what just happened with the DEP's decision, but what's happening above the DEP and that money coming down. We need to have plan A, B, C, D, E at our disposal. And for me, with the housing piece, we need to get young people involved, but they're not going to be here much longer if we don't have housing that they can actually afford. And this is a huge piece to housing. And for me, I think it's about getting the governor's attention with her housing bond bill that she wants to have these huge goals met, 8 to 10,000 accessory dwelling units in 5 years. That's not going to happen on the Cape, let alone across the state, if we don't figure out how to unlock housing, with wastewater being one of the biggest issues. And that came out in their report a couple weeks ago, that is one of the things that they're looking at for multi-housing development. But it's very specifically hindering people being able to house their older adult child or their aging parent or a caregiver or a year-round worker that's feeding you at the fast food restaurant that you go to every night, right? This is directly connecting to housing in a way that I think if we can get outside of the typical players and go above to some of these people and their goals, and to say, look, this isn't involving more money, it's not involving legislation, it's regulatory hurdles that we are facing in our region that the rest of the state's not facing. When we're 85% dependent on septic and the rest of the country is on average 25% septic dependent, it's a real downfall for us. It's a real, we're like in a pit having to climb up higher than anyone else that already has like a connection to sewers, a more urban, less rural area. So I always like to bring it kind of further out and give a bigger picture. And the other piece is that in my neck of the woods, in the outer Lower Cape, they're looking to you guys. They're excited about this. They are interested. There are FinCom people that are going back to their communities and asking them, even if they're sewering, like, let's look at this now as a third option to bring our costs down. There are people that are looking at a housing preservation tool where if you have an aging fixed income senior in a house on a cesspool still, how are you going to get them to upgrade if the IA system is really expensive and that's going to cause them to have to lose their house? They're looking at, can urine diversion be a way that we can preserve people in their houses already, let alone can we produce housing that's more ecologically sound and affordable? So I throw that out there from the housing piece. That's kind of the field that I come from. Well, I mean, my thought is, like, I would love the governor to see the Cape as a accessory dwelling unit innovation corridor where we could pilot this technology related to wastewater and building technology related to small homes in a way that we get more green lights than red lights, right? We don't have time to waste when we have professionals living in cars, taking showers in bathrooms. Like, we need to figure this out now, not just for the water, but for the humans that are unhoused, right? I mean, I talk to a lot of young people in my community, and they are not here for very long if we don't figure out many different solutions. But this is so exciting because it hits so many things. It's environment, it's housing, it's, economic development, it's tourism. All the restaurants that have water allotments because of where they're located on a really nice waterfront view have to serve plasticware, takeout because of water allotments, right? It's hitting every single aspect of our daily life. We need more than two tools. It's not saying this is the only tool. We need more than two tools, especially when we don't know if we're going to get federal money like we used to. That's what keeps me up at night, right? So I just want to share one quick thing that so look up Strong Towns. And I love this just short quote, which is, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. That totally encompasses this work. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler in that sense, even though it's really complicated what we have to do to get through the bureaucracy and the regulatory, but the concept is simple. It's going back to how nature designed things to work, right? So we need to, my last thing is connect with people. We're not going to solve a problem if you don't connect with your neighbor and the stranger that is on the other side of this issue. Like, we've got to build community for this to happen, but also just for our future to have a chance with what's going on in our country right now. You've got to build community. So
If you ever want to go to a tour, just check in with us, and we have tours regularly. If you want to have a tour, just connect with us.